Did you know there's a stretch of water that's 21 miles wide and it's narrowest? And it's a stretch of water that we've all been hearing about, the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, it's affecting your gas bill, your grocery bill, and your heating bill, and potentially your job. And so I'm going to talk for a few minutes about how. So I mentioned it's called the Strait of Hormuz, and it sits between Iran and Oman at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. And through that 21-mile gap flows about 20% of the world's seaborne oil every single day, 20 million barrels daily on tankers the size of small towns queuing up to pass through a gap you could drive across in less than 20 minutes. And right now, that strait is effectively closed. Tanker traffic has dropped by roughly 70%. Over 150 ships are sitting anchored outside of it just waiting. And the ripple effects of that single choke point closing are hitting people in places that have absolutely nothing to do with the conflict that caused it. So let's talk about how it's affecting our lives and your lives specifically. Let's start with gas prices. So the US produces more oil than any country in history, record production. So why are prices up nearly $1 a gallon in a month? It's because oil isn't priced nationally, it's priced globally. And when supply drops anywhere in the world, the price rises everywhere in the world. The US exports about a third of what it produces and imports about a third of what it consumes because different types of crude are better for different products. We're plugged into a global system whether we like it or not. And record domestic production softened the blow, but it didn't eliminate it. And there's another thing we're not really tracking, and it has to do with our grocery bills. About a third of global fertilizer trade flows through the Strait of Hormuz, sulfur, ammonia, and the building blocks of the fertilizers that grow the food you eat. And when that supply gets disrupted, the fertilizer prices go up. And when fertilizer prices go up, food production costs go up. And when food production costs go up, you feel it at the checkout counter, usually about 6 to 12 months later, although I've been noticing it already on my grocery bills. The energy crisis and the food price crisis aren't two separate stories. They're the same stories, but maybe with a slight delay. And then there's other things that nobody's even talking about. LPG, so bottled cooking gas, also flows heavily through the state. Qatar and the UAE supply 99% of Pakistan's gas imports and 72% of Bangladesh's. So for hundreds of millions of people in Southeast Asia and East Africa, this isn't an abstract market story. It's whether they can cook dinner tonight. Energy crises don't always land equally, and the people furthest from the decisions that cause this are often the ones who feel it first and hardest. Plastic is about to get more expensive too. Gulf producers export huge volumes of gases that feed petrochemical plants daily. The ones making the packaging, the polymers, and the materials that flow through basically every supply chain on Earth. Those plants are already getting cut with production. That shortage moves downstream, slowly and kind of quietly, until suddenly everything costs a little bit more, and nobody connects it back to this 21-mile waterway. So what's actually being done about it now? The IEA, the International Energy Agency, authorized the largest emergency oil reserve release in history, 400 million barrels globally, which sounds enormous, but at current global consumption, it covers about 4 days of worldwide demand. Strategic reserves were designed to calm markets during short disruptions. They were never designed to replace a fundamental breakdown in how energy physically moves around the world. The US also suspended a 106-year-old shipping law called the Jones Act, which normally requires cargo between US ports to travel on American ships. Suspending it lets foreign ships help move oil around. Analysts estimate that it'll save consumers maybe 3 cents a gallon, just 3 cents on $4 a gallon gasoline. It's not nothing, but it's also not close to the scale of the problem. And here's one thing I keep coming back to. The Strait has always been a vulnerability in the global energy system for decades. Everyone who works in energy knows it. The choke point is not a surprise. And what's interesting and genuinely complicated is looking at which countries are handling this crisis relatively well and which ones aren't. And it has almost nothing to do with how much oil they produce. What it's telling us is that energy is never just energy. It's food, it's manufacturing, it's heating, it's cooking dinner in rural Bangladesh. It's your gas receipt, it's a geopolitical weapon, it's a national security question, and it's an infrastructure question. And all of these things are happening through a 21-mile gap that most people couldn't even find on a map just last month.